Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Elisa Hassan, and I am part of the marketing team at Beacon Press. I have had the pleasure of working with Sharon Leslie Morgan and Thomas Norman DeWolf for a number of years in helping to bring their work to a wider audience. First, a little bit about them. Sharon Leslie Morgan is a writer and genealogist, a staunch advocate of racial justice. Morgan has co-authored several books, including Gather the Table, The Healing Journey of a Daughter of Slavery and a Son of the Slave Trade with Tom. She's the author of, or the founder of Our Black Ancestry, a genealogy community dedicated to providing resources for African-American genealogical research, preserving historic materials and properties, and promoting healing of wounds that are the legacy of slavery. Thomas Norman DeWolf is an author, public speaker, trainer, and workshop facilitator. And since 2013, he has served as manager for Coming to the Table, an organization whose mission is to provide leadership, resources, and supportive environment for all who wish to acknowledge and heal the wounds from racism that's rooted in the US's history of slavery. In addition to being the co-author of Gather the Table with Sharon, he is also the author of Inheriting the Trade, A Northern Family Confronts its Legacy as the Largest Slave-Trading Dynasty in US history, the story of experiences in the making of the Emmy-nominated PBS documentary Traces of the Trade. He's also co-author with Jody Geddes of The Little Book of Racial Healing. We first talked with Tom and Sharon over the summer where they discussed the deep need for racial healing after the murders of unarmed Black people by police, the protests throughout the country. I'm thrilled to have Sharon and Tom back for a second talk after what seemed like one of the most contentious presidential elections in recent history. Before I turn it over to them, I just want to say, feel free to submit questions through the Q&A button on your screen at any time, and we'll get that to them later in the discussion. And we'll make sure this video is available afterward on our the Beacon Press YouTube page, so you could go and revisit it. First, Tom and Sharon, how are you doing? How is it after these past couple weeks of anxiety and stress? Like, what are you feeling?
Do you want to go first, Sharon?
I have lived in an unrelenting state of anxiety for the last 4 years, and it's not getting any better. I
think like most people, I've never experienced anything like this. The divisions in this country are so deep, and so much of what comes out feels so personal. The way that folks, not only are there the divisions, but then we've got all this online stuff where people feel empowered to say the kind of stuff that when I was a kid, Mom would have washed my mouth out with soap. I find this time really frustrating. And I'm not sure of the way forward. But somehow, I think this is the work of Coming to the Table, is finding those spaces where people can develop the relationships with each other that we currently seem to lack. And maybe it feels different for me because I'm in Oregon and you're in Mississippi. Maybe it feels a little lighter because, I don't know, West Coast to blue state. I don't know.
I don't care where you are. I think wherever you are in America, that it probably feels very much the same.
Yeah.
You live in a bubble in Bend. I live in a bubble in Macon. And these are places that are very small and very different maybe from the rest of America. But it is really frightening to me that there is this roll, R-O-L-L, of acrimony that is taking over the entire country. And it is actually really frightening, maybe for me as a Black person, in ways that it may not be for you, because this is a resurgence of the same type of awfulness that has always existed. And it is not that it ever went away. It's just that we have a person who has been in the White House for the last 4 years who has promoted it,
Yeah.
the divisiveness and the hate and the, and the ugly. There are no good people on both sides. There are awful people and there are good people who are trying to make our society better. And it is really incredibly frightening that it has gained such traction in these times that it is far more than frustrating. It really is frightening to me.
And you really highlight one of the important points. I mean, me being a white male, so-called, it's really different issues, and that's one of the things I appreciate about our relationship all these years, is you've really helped me to understand just how different the world is through your eyes and my eyes. This past weekend, Friday evening and yesterday, we had 2 sessions with Coming to the Table, where we screened this. It was a short film, half an hour long, called Ashes to Ashes. And it's a story about a man who survived a lynching attempt. And this was 50 years ago. And him talking about how that trauma of that revisits. I mean, he can't sleep because every night white men are chasing him in his thoughts and his dreams. And I think of the trauma that gets visited on people, and particularly I think of the Black folks, the friends of George Floyd and others who've been murdered. It's that trauma just runs so deep, and then to have someone in the White House who's enabling and sort of giving permission to people to act out in harmful ways. And this is where I struggle, Sharon. It's like, when I look at this just purely politically, Republicans like McConnell, it's win at all costs. And they become very adept at that. And so many of the Democrats, we want to try and get along, we want to try and work together. And there's people who say, no, time for Democrats to be just as tough and win at all costs. And I sit here and think, so we're really pissed off about the other side and what they're doing. Do we want to adapt their tactics? Is that what's going to get us out of this mess? And this is where I'm so appreciative of some of what you and I have been through, and what gets promoted within Coming to the Table is the importance of stories, of sharing stories with each other, of developing the kind of really authentic and accountable relationships with people that, man.
I struggle really hard with Michelle Obama. Really resonated with me when she said they go low and we go high. But we have reached such rock bottom. It is really hard for me sometimes not to go low.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like, how do you respond? There are problems with both political parties. And I am not happy with either of them in many ways, but I am horrified by what the Republicans are doing. And I can still remain hopeful about the Democrats. But these are really big things to think about. How much can power mean so much to you that you will abandon every concept of morality and human compassion? It just to remain there, like Mitch McConnell. I mean, it's like, how low can you go? And I don't have enough words, but I get really angry and I get really distressed, and I can't go high sometimes. And that makes me sad, because that's like a scar on my soul that I can do that. But these have been such incredibly frightening times that and there's so much more damage that can be done between now and January 20th, that I am really worried for the future of our country, for the future of democracy, and for the preservation of my own personal principles.
Boy, it really nails it, because on the one hand, I want to offer grace and compassion and understanding and listening. And on the other hand, it's important to hold people accountable for the damage that they cause. And when you look at 10 million Americans diagnosed with COVID, and everyone who's died, and the divisions, all the dog whistle discussions with alt-right white supremacist groups, some of the decisions, choices that have been made will have impacts. It's not just like, I'm sorry, we fix it. Some of these decisions are going to have impacts for decades.
Or generations.
Yeah.
And that is part of what is frightening to me, is that what has happened over the last 4 years is that basically the American government has been deconstructed to a point where it may be irretrievable. You look at the court system. So now it's like the courts are so loaded with people who are Trumpians, and that's very frightening, because they won't ever have to give up their seats. They'll be there.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court. And it is really frightening, because this is going to last for a long time. And like I said, there's so much more that can happen between now and January 20th, that I feel that this administration is, when Pompeo is going on a 7-country tour, and they're trying to embed their policies beyond the next administration. So unwrapping this, when Biden goes in, it's going to be incredible. The fact that they will not let the transition happen, that the Bulgarian will not concede and will not allow the transition to happen. The General Accounting Office will not accept the transition. This is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and this is where I find it exceedingly frustrating. And I also recognize I really can't do anything about that. I'm so blown away. I live in Oregon, where everyone with a driver's license or any sort of identifying address is automatically registered to vote, period. And everyone is mailed a ballot with a pre-postage envelope inside. I mean, it's just automatic. And to hear all of the gerrymandering and voter suppression and stuff that takes place, it just makes me crazy. So the work that we have been doing and continue to do is, man, that's so big, what can I do? You know, the reason that we wrote Gather the Table is, here's what two people can do. And that's the thing that I've appreciated about, you know, working with you, is, as frustrating as that is, I can't change the rules in Mississippi or Georgia or even Oregon. Outside of the stuff I have no control over, what do I have control over? There's a question in the question box about, do you have any advice about what a white person should communicate when initially reaching out to a Black person who may have a genealogical connection, you know, last name multiple generations ago? There are actually several resources on the Coming to the Table website about, if you go to comingtoThetable.org and look under working groups, there's a linked descendants working group with some resources there that can help. And we also have a YouTube page, and there's a video from
Thank you.
Sorry, you know, part of my paranoia is I also cover up my camera when I'm not using it, and the paper slipped down.
Me too, which is why you see my fan when I first come on.
Yeah. So anyway, on the Coming to the Table website, there's a lot of resources available there for connecting with other people and ideas, and we can certainly offer that. And you can be in communication with folks that come to the table as well. Another question, I've been thinking a lot about Dr. King's ideas about creating the beloved community. My Coming to the Table local group discussed last night how we can create the beloved community in Asheville, North Carolina, and the surrounding county. We've just scratched the surface. What do you think about the idea of trying to focus on creating the beloved community? Is it pie in the sky? It might be, but a goal that might at least push the needle. It feels like this has been some of the work for, I don't know, decades that people have been trying to do, and it really feels like, I mean, Coming to the Table was founded on Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech that, you know, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners would gather at the table of brotherhood together. Is it pie in the sky? Yeah, but that's our work.
And I think that we have, as we wrote in the book, the problems of the world are so gigantic. It is really hard to conceive of how you can make a difference. But I think it is 1-1-1, a person who is a ripple on the pond. So you have to do whatever you can do for yourself, for your immediate sphere of influence, and it grows outward so that things can change. And hopefully enough people will do that so that it makes a systemic change. And that is that's the best answer I have ever been able to come up with. And when we went on our journey and we wrote the book and we ended up with that proposition, that still is true for me. because I can't, and I've seen it happen in the community in which I live, is that I now live in this very small community in rural Mississippi, and I have been able to do things in the 2.5 years that I've been here that really have made a difference with the white people and how they think, with Black people and how they think, and with changing the paradigm with the community. And I feel really proud and happy about that. And that is a excellent example of exactly what we said. You want to be a ripple on the pond. You want to, you know, do what you can do with yourself, because it is a changing of heart. It is not, you have to change how you think and feel about things. And that is an internal proposition, and then act on that. And the coming to the table principles, confronting the truth, and being led to make action. Because when you see what is going on around you and you appreciate that, then you should feel compelled to do something differently, or something that is active to change what is happening in your community. And I'm sorry I keep sneezing, but my cat is walking around my desk and I'm allergic to him. So sorry for the sneezing.
One of the related, a very closely related question is, how do you see social change happening? What's the driving force? Do cultural change and interpersonal relationships lead the way, or is it about fighting, feet on the street litigation? Maybe both. Maybe it is both. But ultimately, I really believe it's the relationships, and it's the sharing of stories that build those relationships. That's what Sharon and I did. Is we spent time and we laughed together, we cried together, we got angry, but we stuck it out. And you know, I really believe that ultimately it's one heart and mind at a time. Whatever it is that we're trying to, whatever it is that we're trying to do, is that shift is a personal one. I mean, I look at the 1960s, we passed the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, all kinds of fights and protests, and look where we are today. It didn't solve racism. It didn't solve voter suppression. It didn't even solve several very important aspects of civil rights. We need enough people to change their minds and their hearts. As an example, I look at gay marriage and the legalization of cannabis products, marijuana, THC, CBD. All of that now is, I mean, gay marriage is the law of the land. So, and it took enough people saying that's okay in order for society then to change to match that. Legalized marijuana is now the case medicinally in most states in the country. And in a lot of states, recreational use. It's because attitudes have changed as we learn more. The biggest challenge that we have is getting stories that are just simply not true. And people,
and that's the other side of this, is that 70 million people voted for the Bulgarian. Yeah. That is a huge number of people. So they're not there. They are oblivious to reality. They are the equal and opposing force. And I don't know that we will ever be able to, we can't change them. We can only deal with us, with the people who are on the side of right. And we have to embrace compassion, human values,
Yeah.
So 75 million people actually believe in that. And I can only pray that we will, in the end, be the prevailing force. Democracy, former President Obama was on television on CBS 60 Minutes last night. And he said this, it's like democracy is a work in progress. So we're looking for making a better society. And there's a horrible story about how this country came to be, and a horrible story about how it got to be the powerhouse of the universe. But we have somehow taken step by step by step, and many things have gotten better. So we really, beyond maybe I should sing Amazing Grace right now. Beyond having those 75 million people who are on the right side, I want us to prevail. And harking back to what you said, it's an individual moment. It's like each one.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because when I have these conversations, I think, I know people, I love people who voted for Trump, and I don't get it. And the words that I use about us and them, they can use the exact same words about us and believe it just as much as we believe what we're saying. And that's where it comes down to the building of relationships. If we're going to argue about race, abortion, capitalism, gender stuff, whatever it is, if I actually care about you and you actually care about me, we'll listen to each other. And that's the relationships with the other side. And honest to God, I've blocked people. I have unfriended people, and I have been unfriended over issues of race. So
because that's not what's happening now. It's like people have closed off, so that they're not having those conversations. They are not able to entertain any other point of view except their own. And that is the problem. The government is dysfunctional because there is no place for compromise. There is no place for conversation. It's my way or the highway. And that is not right. And I don't know how to change that, but that has got to change, because I think that in the past, democracy means the majority will prevail, and the obstructionists have made it impossible for democracy to work.
Well, and one of the people.
So we can't have these conversations. We can't. It's like I've had to give up people that I really did care about, because I can't. You're not listening to me. You don't hear this.
Yeah.
Friends who are believing QAnon. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that goes to one of the questions one person asked is, did the Trump diehards have the potential of creating a new lost cause movement? I don't think it's a new lost cause. I think it's the same one.
Exactly. Amen.
And so it's one more way to sell more T-shirts that the South is going to rise again. And I don't say that to disparage the South. I say that to recognize that people hold on to stuff because it's meaningful to them. And for some of us, it's our maleness. For some of us, it's our whiteness. For some of us, it's our Christianity.
And the lost cause is no longer the South versus the North. The lost cause is white men losing power.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so don't make it South-North. It has evolved into something else, where it's like white men in particular are afraid of losing their hegemony over the entire world.
And in a certain sense, that's been the case for 1,000 years.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's what a mess. But and that's it, is that there's no magic elixir to this. I mean, how do you build relationships? Go to let's see, it used to be called Better Angels. I think it's now called braverangels.com. These are folks that are bringing together extreme right and left wing political folks to spend a weekend together building those kinds of relationships. And they're doing wonderful work. And there's others coming to the table. That's what we're attempting to do. And because so much is online, you get the trolls, you get the people who are joining just to stir up trouble. So there's no magic to building the relationships, but that's it. It's the relationships.
And it's persevering. Even when it seems like all is lost, it is still being able to maintain your moral compass and to walk forward in the belief in humanity, the equanimity of all people, and the beauty of all humanity, and living your life in that way.
Well,
I know, I'm shaking my head too. It's like,
you know, it's like, and I'm sitting here, I'm sort of monitoring the questions that are coming up, and there are so many. It's like, isn't staying engaged in conversation the only place to find help, compromise, and movement forward? It feels harder to find others who are willing, wanting, you know, to communicate. How might the change, even on a personal connection level? Any lines or opening invitations that you might suggest? It's like, man, oh man, you know, what are the parallels in Match.com? You know, the thing is, there's no easy answers. There's no speed dating to this stuff. This is long, slow work. It's like the difference between traditional criminal justice, which is something bad happened, who did it and what do they deserve, or doing things that actually make a difference, like in restorative justice, about who all's involved here, who all's been harmed, including the perpetrator, and how do we get to a place of accountability as well as healing for everybody, and whose responsibility. It's like, it's really complicated. Oh, that's too much work. Let's just lock them up and throw away the key. Well, why don't we just lock up all the Trump supporters and throw away the key? And what do we solve? Nothing.
Well, on my bad days, I would agree with that. But
yeah, but you know, somebody asked, can't we just drive them back into their holes or the shadows? And it's like, well, in reality, that is going to happen. You know, people, when they are out of favor, they tend to shut up. But when they're inspired or empowered, then they're out there with the flags and the hats. So some of this will just evolve naturally, but I just, oh my gosh. I'm trying to look through lots of questions, which I really appreciate. One person asked about helping in the Georgia runoff race. I have no idea. I would suggest watching Facebook, because every other ad is about helping out in Georgia. And I say that lighthearted. I of course encourage people to do what they can, and that's one side of this. There's the action of political action, and all of which is important. Signing petitions, marching in the streets, all that is important. That, however, is not the changing of hearts and minds. And that takes the real work of being in a relationship. And it can be exhausting. And so the other half of this, or another big important part of this, is taking care of ourselves. So when things are just too much, take a nap, take a walk, talk with your friends. I mean, I know that when Sharon and I can get really frustrated or whatever, we reach out to each other because we've developed a friendship. And I think that's really ultimately what we can do. And like Sharon said at the very beginning, do what I can do where I am, be that ripple on the pond from where I am, and caring for myself as well as I can. Man, and the impact that we can have on our children, on our friends. It's, I guess that's the main message that we're both offering today is, ain't no easy answers. There's no 1, 2, 3, and everything's magically going to be repaired if people will just do what I want them to do. But the thing that I've always appreciated about the work that we've done together, Sharon, and the whole coming to the table approach is it's a whole approach, you know, dealing with the history, the healing, building the connections, taking the action, and doing so in a way that respects each other's values as we move forward.
Okay, so I see 3 things here. Please share what you've done in Mississippi. Here's my small act in this very small town. There are like 2,200 people in my town. And what I did was I've been researching my family here for a very long time. And I got involved with the Historical Society, which is a lot of very old white people who really want to maintain the glory of the South. And I have managed in 2.5 years to bring them around, to not only get them on the internet, but to get them to thinking about what our history means and to be more inclusive so that we are now able to present all sides of the story. So that is my example of my little small, what one person can do. And they haven't killed me yet, and the Ku Klux Klan has not turned up at my front door. So
thank God.
It seems to be working. And then the next one is, how do we build relationships with the other side? They don't seem to want to listen. It is really hard with the quote other side. There are instances where if you see a doorway, you just keep chipping away and trying to talk sense into people. And then there are other people where it is hopeless and you know you're never going to win. And I don't waste my time on those people because it's that obviously I'm never going to prevail. So you have to pick your battles and decide, you know, what you're going to do. And maybe this Thanksgiving will be really interesting because we won't be able to sit around a table with our loved ones. So we won't have those arguments. So let's see what happens away from the table. Another one is, I have a desire to reach out to descendants of people enslaved on plantations owned by my ancestors. I have done many research projects with people who want to have linked descendants, descendants of slaveholding families who want to make linkages with the people that were enslaved. And I have not, in only one case, have I run into a African-American person who did not want to have the connection. In all other cases, people were very welcoming, and they may have trepidation at first, but they are really interested. It is like me when Tom and I wrote Gather at the Table, and I did this research, And it seemed counterintuitive that I would seek out a relationship with people who had enslaved my ancestors. And it ended up being a very good thing because these are modern contemporary people who actually want to look at the past and and do something about it. And it ended up being the most incredible, great thing I've done, because I finally had someone like with Tom, where it's like, you are Mr. White Man and you are willing to stand up and hear my side of the story. And now I have someone to confront, not in an evil way, but someone who I can confront with these dilemmas I feel in my head, and to respond back to me in a way that was like, we can work on this together. So you should reach out, and you should.
Yeah.
It really does help.
Well, I think it's important that people understand at the comingtothetable.org website is, number one, look at all the various resources. There's a lot in there. But in addition to that, look under working groups, and there's both linked descendants and reparations, both of which work in connecting with people from the other side. And there's, Our Black Ancestry, both the website and the Facebook group, which, gosh, what is there, 35,000 or more now, Sharon?
Yeah.
In the Facebook group. So there's lots of resources that are available, and anyone who has questions can also go to the Coming to the Table website and just go to the Contact Us form. And that'll come to the office, and we'll make sure that Sharon and I get those messages. So that's another way to connect if there's questions that get asked today that we don't get to. But connecting with other people, the idea of being in a place of repair, reparations, there's a lot of really wonderful resources available on the Coming to the Table website. Elaborate on this statement mentioned in chapter 13, and seeking to acknowledge, understand, and heal these and other persistent wounds of the institution of slavery. The Coming to the Table approach revolves around 4 key and interrelated activities. Yeah. And here again, we'll talk a little bit about it here, but also on the About link on the Coming to the Table website goes into a little more detail. But Coming to the Table from the very beginning has been like 4 legs on a table. And the history is all of history, whether it's local, national, international, personal, community. What's the history, all of it, and the impact that it's had down through the years. The making of connections is what we've been talking about, the building of relationships, the sharing of stories, the being accountable and authentic with each other. Individual and collective healing is any form of healing, whether it's your faith community or yoga, music, writing, art, walking in nature, whatever healing by any means necessary. And then the ongoing action is a focus on undoing systems of oppression that exist based on race in communities and states and around the country. But those 4 pillars of the Coming to the Table approach are also grounded in the concepts of restorative justice, which we discussed a little earlier, and trauma awareness and resilience, and understanding that the historic damage from the legacy of slavery is something that keeps getting passed down generation to generation. And so understanding trauma and how it gets passed down is really an important part of this work. So I hope that explains, but there's a lot more information on the website, and again, the contact information or the contact box is another way to be in touch, and really welcome people to connect afterwards.
And just so you know, we're both Tom and I are very responsive. So when we get these messages, we actually do respond. So don't feel like you're just throwing something out there in cyberspace and you'll never get an answer.
Yeah. So we've got about 10 minutes left. And let's see, I think that we've connected to most of the questions. I recently attended a 4-week class on Roots Deeper Than Whiteness, hosted by Wide Awake and affiliative Surge, standing up for racial justice. At the last class, several inspiring resources on groups that are doing deep canvassing, having long listening sessions with white, rural, and or working class voters, something the Democratic Party has not been doing, agreed. Here are a couple of resources that I found so people can see peoplesaction.org and a YouTube connection. So I hope people are seeing that in the Q&A section. Lisa, is there anything else that you'd like us to connect on?
Hi. Well, we talked, a lot about Trump. It would be good to hear your thoughts on, the incoming president and vice president, and hopes for, how, we might hold them accountable and leadership accountable for, promises made on racial justice.
I think that Biden, we'll start with this. I think Biden made an incredible step in naming his vice president as an African-American Asian woman. And I think that that was huge because maybe at his age, she may end up being the president, which would be really interesting. Although he's very healthy and I'm not wishing anything bad on him. But I think that that was kind of amazing after we went through 2016 and Hillary Clinton didn't make it. So I think that was like an incredible move on his behalf to do that. I think that once as he is going through this period between now and January 20th, he is doing what he should do, which is to carry forward, even if the Bulgarian administration will not cooperate, that he is proceeding with a plan for COVID, with a plan for developing the economy. So I think that those are really good things. And I think that once he is actually in office, there is so much that will have to happen so fast that it may take executive orders to make these things possible. But I think that I believe that he has the commitment to address these huge issues: healthcare, immigration, racial justice. So I feel like that is definitely on top of mind for him. And I feel very hopeful that he will be able to do things immediately that will help. And he'll have 4 years, and hopefully Georgia is going to win, so he will not be blockaded as Obama was.
I agree, and the thing that I'm trying to have in my own head is recognizing, like Dr. King spoke about, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Nothing's really going to feel wonderful on January 20th or February 20th. There's going to be arguing and fighting and difficulty all the way, no matter what. So how do we do our best? For me, it's recognizing there's politics, and then there's what we the people can really do. And one of the things that one person, Phoebe Kilby, brought up is about David Camp and the White Ally Toolkit. So I'm going to put a link to a YouTube video of David introducing the White Ally Toolkit at coming to the table into the chat. But I really believe that what we're talking about here is how do we maintain our health and sanity knowing that nothing is going to be repaired soon, because repair takes time. It takes time if we're sick physically and we're sick as a nation. And I remember a friend of mine, Harold Fields from Denver, he said that, you know, it's taken us 400 years to get into this mess. We're not going to get out of it in a weekend anti-racism workshop. This is gonna be a long haul, and it has been, and will continue to be. And
that is probably true, but one of my frustrations is that I am sick and tired of being sick and tired.
yeah,
And I really want things to happen sooner rather than later. And that is a frustration that I have to deal with. But I ain't waiting 400. I won't be here 400 years from now.
yeah.
And I'm not willing to wait that long for something to be different.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Sharon. I think that there is change that is taking place. Just the fact that Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president, what a dramatic shift since the beginning of this nation. So things will continue.
The fact that the Bulgarian did not win, that is a big step.
Yeah, yeah.
In spite of 70 million people voting for him. So yeah, there are really bright spots, but there is this undercurrent about American society that I really have no idea how we change that.
Yeah. Yeah. But ending on a note of hope.
But yes.
Yeah.
And I am trying to follow my friend Tom's kumbaya philosophy.
I wondered when the K word was
believing
going to
that
make
things
its
will be
appearance.
better.
But that's the thing is that, and you know, just to go back to the point about the importance of relationships is I lean on Sharon. And the reason I'm able to do that and not feel like, oh, here's the white guy leaning on the black lady to try and learn how to be a better white person, it's because we broke through the crap when we made the commitment to be friends, when we made the commitment to stay with each other and love each other and care for each other and each other's kids and grandkids, period. And that's when it allows us to break through all the divisions and get to the point where human relationships are what really matters. And we get to that point, I just want to care for people. And I think most people believe that. It's just all the noise out there is designed to be divisive. I mean, I've been involved in politics and publicity for most of my adult life. And I understand in the newspaper world, if it bleeds, it leads. They want the division because that's what sells newspapers and magazines and TV shows. So we're going to get in there and we're going to fight and we're going to interrupt each other. And there's nothing real there. It's all for show. It's all like the movie Network back in the 70s was just a little bit ahead of its time because that's where we're at. It's all putting on a show.
Because I am mad at talent, I can't take it anymore.
Exactly right. So maybe we can keep working on building each other up and hoping that we can, over time, make connections with people that it feels impossible to connect with now, because ultimately we got to believe it's possible, or what's the point of going on? Is that as upbeat as we can be, Elisa?
Well, I always love listening, to your conversations. It fills me with hope. Always, even if it's ends on a down note. But thank you so much for talking with us again. And I look forward to talking again sometime when hopefully there's less stress and anxiety and more hope in the world.
Won't that be nice?
Definitely.
The struggle continues. We must go ever onward and upward.
We sure appreciate everybody participating today.
Yeah.
Means a lot. Thank you.